So we're talking about something that started over 2,000 years ago, which means that people like you and me have had 2,000 years to royally screw this thing up and at times forget what it was all about to begin with anyways. And so we have this predominant view on Christianity today that is largely being driven by a culture that is increasingly referring to itself as post-religious. Hey, what's up, guys? I'm Drew, and this is Christianology. Thanks for jumping on and hanging out. The topic of the day, and really the topic of this entire channel, the reason that I'm over here, and hopefully the reason that you're over there, is to get a better understanding of what this thing really is. What is Christianity? What is it all about? Who's right? Who's wrong? And how does that apply to me? Because Christianity in the last 2,000 years has gotten a little bit messy. We have a lot of moving parts. We have a lot of organizations. We have the Catholics. We have the Orthodox. We have the LDS. And we have a lot of different Protestant churches. And all of them do things just a little differently. They all have their own flavor and their own take on what Christianity really is. And they all claim to be right, and sometimes with an exclusivity that pertains only to their religion or their organization, which is crazy confusing and disturbing for those of us that just genuinely want to know and serve God and make it off of this planet, eventually, and into a place that isn't full of perpetual torture. And as weird as it is, some people don't care enough about that to have this discussion. People challenging their belief systems isn't something they feel like they want or they need to do. And to be honest, some Christian traditions actually discourage doing that. But I just can't make myself buy into that line of thinking. I mean, sure, my faith, it's personal. It's very personal. But that doesn't mean it shouldn't be durable enough to hold up to some scrutiny. And that's what this is really all about. It's about scrutinizing our belief system and cutting through all the man-made confusion to get to the heart of this monumental issue in our life. What does it really mean to be a Christian? And so that's what we're going to talk about today, and I'm going to give you my take on that discussion. But before I do, I want to qualify that statement in just a few different ways. Number one, Christianity is a very, very big topic, and the goal of this video is not to cover every expression or tradition of Christianity, and it's not to find the areas where we're different to give you ammunition to use against the church down the street. The goal of this video is to cover the areas where we share commonality, the few things that we agree on that bind all Christian churches together. The second thing, understand that this opinion is coming from me. I'm not a church, I'm not an organization, I'm not a pastor or anything like that. I'm just Drew, and this opinion is based on my experiences and the things that I know right now. And so as much as I believe that what I'm going to talk about is rooted in truth, it is absolutely rooted in my opinion of what the truth actually is. And finally, everything that I just said does not mean that there is not objective truth, because there is. It just means that I don't fully understand it, or that I'm really bad at explaining it, which is probably true. And that's because I'm working with a very finite level of intelligence and time and resources and energy, and trying to understand and explain something that is infinite and beyond our ability to completely comprehend anyways. And so my opinion, just like anyone else's, is going to be messed up a little bit, or a lot. But that doesn't mean God's messed up. God is perfect and He's eternal, and so is His Word. And any shortcoming in understanding and explaining that is certainly due to my nature and not His. But my flawed nature does not take away from the fact that objective truth does exist. Okay, so we got that out of the way. God is big, and I don't completely understand Him. My opinions are my own and don't necessarily represent the opinion of anybody else. And they're probably wrong anyways, because I'm a human with a flawed nature and a poor ability to understand complicated God things. So now that my self-confidence is shattered, let's jump in. So we're talking about something that started over 2,000 years ago, which means that people like you and me have had 2,000 years to royally screw this thing up and at times forget what it was all about to begin with anyways. And so we have this predominant view on Christianity today that is largely being driven by a culture that is increasingly referring to itself as post-religious. And you can see that in the numbers, because over the last 15 years, about 15% of the population has stopped identifying as Christian. Now, that's about 1% per year for those of you that aren't real quick with math, and what that means is that we have about another 15 years until Christianity officially becomes a minority in Western culture. And to be honest, we aren't always helping our own cause there, because we do some crazy ignorant and divisive things at times. And when you couple those areas where we fall short as Christians and just as humans in general with a culture that is increasingly less tolerant of our views to begin with, it results in this opinion of Christianity that isn't great, but it is oftentimes pretty exaggerated and inaccurate. So before we talk about what Christianity is, let's talk about what Christianity is not, because we really have some things that stand in the way as potential barriers to entry from someone on the outside looking in. Okay, so first, Christianity is not a religion, and we do this terrible job of confusing our faith with our religion. Your religion is what you do. It's about customs and it's about rituals, but your faith is about a belief system. Now, if you do this right, your faith will inform the things that you do, and therefore it will inform your religion, but your faith is not your religion. I do certain things in my life because I have faith, but I don't have faith because I do certain things. And that's the difference. So Christianity, it isn't about just showing up to church on Sunday and following rules, which is a very good thing because I am not a good arbitrary rule follower. And if this was just about following arbitrary rules without some faith-guided purpose, I'd fail every time. But this confusion leads people to believe that Christianity is where you go to get in trouble, which is not the case. Your religion might be where you go to get in trouble, but Christianity is where you go to get saved. Okay, the next one. Christian churches are full of hypocrites. Now, technically, that one's true, but it deserves some explanation. So, does Christianity have some really high moral standards? Yes, it does. And do we fall short of that on a very frequent basis? Yes, absolutely we do. And is that disappointing? Sure. But does it mean that Christians are hypocrites? No, it does not. And here's why. So hypocrisy, by definition, is a pretense, which is a false claim of having high standards or morals that you really don't possess. So true hypocrisy is actually about intentional deception, and that is categorically different than someone who actually has moral standards that they fall short of. So hear me out on this. Hypocrisy is not what Christians do, okay? It might be what people in Christian churches do, but it's not what Christians do, because being a Christian means there's this inherent understanding that you're actually pretty messed up, right? You're a sinner, you're flawed, you're corrupt, you're immoral, you're all these things. And if you have truly adopted that internally, which is like a basic prerequisite for any expression of Christianity, then there can be no false pretense. There are just people who fall short of that moral standard. But either way, here's the thing. People are messed up, okay? I'm messed up. You're messed up probably, and it doesn't matter if it's because of hypocrisy or falling short of moral standards. People are just flat out messed up. And so if you're looking at anybody to be this perfect representation of Jesus and you want to call them a hypocrite when they fall short of that, well, then the joke's probably on you because you're making a claim that you probably don't understand and that you definitely can't prove. The only thing that can be proven here is that someone fell short of God's perfect moral standard, which isn't like earth-shattering news, because putting your faith in Jesus is literally admitting that you're too messed up to be independently worthy of redemption anyways. The real problem that frustrates people is it's like really hard to tell who's a hypocrite and who's a real Christian that's just struggling with their flawed humanity, because there are wolves everywhere in sheep's clothing, and they confuse people and they give Christians a bad rap. So are there hypocrites in your church? Absolutely. But that's still not an excuse to stay away, because isolating yourself to stay away from bad people is like the exact opposite of Jesus' desire for your life. Because remember, Jesus didn't come to save the righteous. He came to save the sinner. Okay, so then what is it? What is Christianity? Just kidding. So this whole thing really started 2,000 years ago when Jesus was walking along and he found two fishermen and told them, hey, come follow me. And that's essentially what we're doing here in grossly oversimplified terms. We're just following Jesus, okay? But in following Jesus, a certain framework of belief systems began to establish themselves, and necessarily so, because anytime you're going to follow someone, you need to understand what that person is trying to accomplish, how they're going to do it, how you fit into that plan, and why do you care anyways? And so again, in very simple terms that nearly every Christian would agree on, this Jesus was the Son of God that was born to a virgin mother, that lived a blameless life, that died on the cross to atone for the sins of humanity, that rose from the dead 3 days later, that today is very much alive, and that if we put our faith in him, we have access to salvation from the eternal damnation that we're all deserving of. So that was 7 things. And to be honest, there really aren't very many more things than that Christians just universally agree on. And those aren't 7 simple things. They're really deep, complex complex issues that all require their own conversation and thought and attention, and we'll cover all those things as we go forward. So that was not meant to make Christianity look simple, because it's not. It was just meant to show where there's a base of commonality that we can build from. But that's it, like full stop. Everything after that is debatable and is debated often. And it has caused this arbitrary theological fracturing in the church. So now, anywhere you go, you'll find a church that shares those same core beliefs, but they choose to practice in their own way. And on one hand, it can seem pretty deflating that we can't find any agreement on these issues. And if I'm being honest, maybe even a little bit disturbing, because we're all working from the same text, but we come away with this huge variety of convictions on how Christianity should be practiced. And if I'm being real about that, that messes with me a little bit. But on the other hand, it's a great illustration of just how versatile and durable Christianity is, because you can take this faith and you can mold it into your own culture and customs and do things within that are culturally significant while still holding on to the core values that bind us all together as one universal church. But it's fair to say that that versatility does create some natural uncertainty. And so if you're over there thinking this is as clear as mud and you have more questions than you have answers, well, I think that's good, because it means you're looking for the truth and that you haven't trivialized this really important discussion in your life. And that discussion, that conversation, that's why we're here, is to wade through the mud of all the religion and the doctrine and the tradition and interpretation to get to the heart of what's really important about who God is, what his plan is, and how that matters to you. So if you're down for some difficult conversations and for challenging your belief system so that hopefully we can come out better on the other side, well, I think you're in the right place. I'm Drew, this is Christianology, and we'll see you again soon.